So we put our heads together, trying to understand how we could potentially come up with like a solution that was really privacy oriented, that addressed these new recommendations. And here we are today with a technical framework that we developed and that we're now releasing to the public.
Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 17. We've got a special interview for you today tied to a major announcement. By the time you're tuning in, the private white paper will have already been published Tuesday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Private, that's private in all caps. What is it? Private is essentially a technical framework for tackling travel rule compliance when it comes to non-custodial wallets. That's a big deal. When you think of Web3, crypto, DeFi, NFTs, the non-custodial wallet is really the portal into that entire world. And if you look at the last couple of years, just the explosive growth that we've seen, the reality of regulations, it's really a matter of when and how. And so the question becomes, how do we abide by the rules of the road? How do we continue to innovate while maintaining the decentralized spirit, the sovereignty, and the privacy of the blockchain space? And that's really where private comes in. Today, I have the two co-authors of the white paper, Vadim Slavin and Francesco Piccoli, with me today. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. Vadim and
Hi, Alec.
Francesco are going to walk us through what private is all about. So let's start with some intros. Vadim, you've been with us, a few times on the podcast. Do you want to start?
Yeah, Alec, thank you for having me. So my name is Vadim Slavin. I've been with GlobaliD for a few years now. I'm the director of the Credentials platform. And should we introduce GlobaliD at this point? What the hell? GlobaliD is the platform for self-sovereign identity, empowering consumers to take ownership of their own data, their own information, so that they're always in control who they share their information with.
Yep. And thank you, Alec, for having us. Thank you, Vadim, for the intro. Francesco here, originally Italian. As you can probably tell by the name. I'm the director of product at AnChain, and I work on delivering cutting edge technology solutions for the blockchain industry, which doesn't just include like blockchain companies, but also financial institutions and governments around the world. Prior to joining AnChain, I conducted cutting edge research on autonomous driving and anomaly detections on blockchains. With respect to AnChain, right, we were born in 2018. We raised 3 rounds of financing so far, and we built an AI-powered blockchain intelligence platform for security, risk, and compliance in the blockchain industry. That spans from preventative solution and post-incident solutions. So that's a quick overview.
Very, very cool. Well, it's great to have both of you with us. So, private. Before we get into it, do you guys want to talk a little bit about the genesis of this project, how it all came about, how AnChain and GlobaliD came together? Francesco, what's the story here?
Yeah, great question, Alec. We've, with GlobaliD, we've been kind of collaborating together and putting our heads together for the past year and trying to understand how we could combine our two technologies and capabilities. And last October, right, the Financial Action Task Force released updated recommendations touching DeFi, NFTs, stablecoins, and wire transfers. In particular, there was one section, 179C of these recommendations, that updated the guidance, the FATF guidance to include non-custodial wallet, right? So basically, after the release of like these updated recommendation, virtual virtual asset service providers that interact with non-custodial wallets are subject to travel rule requirements. And of course, we're talking non-custodial wallet. We're talking about any wallet that you use today to interact with DeFi, to interact with NFTs, to interact with a lot of like the cool innovations that are happening in the blockchain space. So with GlobaliD and Vadim specifically, right, we started looking into what that specific recommendation implied for the cryptocurrency space and what new challenges it brought to the players in the industry. So we really realized that by combining what we were doing at AnChain and what Vadim and team were doing at GlobaliD, we really could like provide solutions for the industry players that address that specific recommendation. So when a VASP interact with a non-custodial wallet. So we put our heads together, trying to understand how we could potentially come up with like a solution that was really privacy oriented, that addressed these new recommendations. And here we are today with a technical framework that we developed and that we're now releasing to the public.
And that's exactly how I remember it as well. So perfect. Thank you for summarizing it. Yeah, at GlobaliD, we've been thinking about Web3 for a while. We believe that self-sovereign identity is going to be very, very much foundational for the Web3 world. And so, of course, GlobaliD is looking at the future of that space and what it means for transferring financial assets and what it means to have custodial or non-custodial wallets, specifically with respect to cryptocurrencies. So this was a very natural partnership with AnChain because they are the experts in their field. And of course, we're looking to apply the self-sovereign identity stack to the problems of Web3 world. And we believe that being compliant with regulations is a very important problem to solve.
An important problem, and it seems like a very natural collaboration as well. Let's talk about the travel rule a little bit. I'm certainly no regulatory expert, but the way that I understand it is that financial institutions, when they're transferring customer funds from their account to another financial institution's account, some sort of information exchange needs to happen as it pertains to the regulations. Obviously, in a custodial world, like banks, for instance, that's very intuitive how that would work. Um, right? If the bank is managing your funds, they're also managing your identity. When you look at recent announcements from Coinbase, for instance, they also have their new trust platform, which is essentially a custodial solution for the travel rule when it comes to crypto and everything else. Um, Non-custodial wallets are this very different kind of beast, right? Because it's really just a couple of cryptographic keys. There's not necessarily any identity attached to it. um Vadim, can you walk us through a little bit of how private works and how it differentiates
Mhm.
from how we traditionally understand the travel rule and sort of custodial offerings?
Sounds good. Sounds good. Let me start off with kind of travel rule. What is it? If you had to send a wire transfer to from your bank to another bank, you're of course familiar that you have to fill out all this information, and this is because financial institutions are required to not only to collect information about the originator and the beneficiary of the transaction, they have to forward it on to the correspondent bank, to the bank of the beneficiary. So it means for that information to travel along with the transaction. That's why it's called travel rule. So of course we knew that eventually travel rule is going to be a thing for virtual asset service providers like Coinbase and Robinhoods and Upholds of this world, simply because they are kind of acting like a bank. They are in charge of the assets that we hold with those companies. They're in charge of access to those funds. And so they are essentially transmitting value. They're transmitting funds. So FATF came back and says, well, yeah, guess what? It is a thing. Travel rule is going to be a thing for crypto as well. But there's this interesting thing about non-custodial wallets. Like there isn't really an entity that you can that you can compel to follow this travel rule compliance. So what does it mean for a custodian of your assets to comply with travel rule when you're sending money to a non-custodial wallet? So first of all, there's within a private white paper, we describe kind of two major use cases, if you will, when you're trying to transfer money to a non-custodial wallet. So the first one is if I'm transferring money to myself, this is my non-custodial wallet. This is essentially a funds transfer, a withdrawal of funds from the custodian, from a VASP like Robinhood. And another one is sending money. So if I'm sending money to somebody else that controls that non-custodial wallet, that is not me. So obviously the way that those two transactions are going to be handled from the regulatory perspective and risk management perspective are very, very different. However, there isn't really a solution out there today that can differentiate between those two transactions. And so we were thinking, okay, well, is there a way based on the AnChain's technology to be able to verify ownership of the non-custodial wallets so that I can prove that this is money going to me, so I don't have to really disclose any additional information about the other party. And for the likes of Robinhood, Coinbase, Uphold, for them to know kind of their regulatory obligation with respect to this specific kind of a transaction. Okay, so this is a low-hanging fruit. A user can just use their GlobaliD identity to verify ownership of a non-custodial wallet with the help of AnChain, and then provide that the credential that is a result of a successful verification over when they're ready to initiate a transaction. Okay, that is easy. What about when you're sending money to somebody else? And here I am saying, I want to transfer money over to Alec or Francesco. Well, there is a problem now. First of all, there's no way for Robinhood or Coinbase to know whether I'm telling the truth or not, whether they need to check Alec or Francesco, potential recipients, against the OFAC, for example, against the sanctions list. And what does it mean to their risk management matrix? Maybe somebody took over my account and maybe it's trying to send money to somebody and misrepresent where those monies are going. Of course, that is a big challenge for VASPs, and Private Framework is hoping to solve those challenges. Francesco, you have anything to add?
Yeah, no, I think you gave a great overview, Vadim, right? And the travel rule is really being kind of like been out there for quite a bit, right? Initially for traditional financial institutions, right, and traditional money transfers, and beginning from 2019, recommendation 16 of the Financial Action Task Force introduced extended these requirements to virtual asset service providers, right, to share personal identifiable information and know your customer data between transacting sender and receivers, right? Of course, it's easy when it's two VASPs interacting between each other, right? It's easy because like you have the Coinbase of this world and the Uphold of this world that can easily exchange this information. But how do you actually do it when there's a non-custodial wallet on the other side that is not subject to these specific recommendations or / requirements, and it by nature is very privacy oriented, right? Well, this is why we put our heads together and we actually came up with a solution that is very privacy oriented and that still allows VASP to be compliant with this recommendation, right? And there's great solutions that have been outlined out there in the industry. From you mentioned Trust before. There's OpenVASP, Trisa, Intervat. There's a lot of other solutions and framework that have been outlined. All these frameworks are specific for interactions between VASP, right? So VASP to VASP. So there's this brand new problem that has not been solved that we are specifically tackle. So this is like, we're very complementary to the solutions that have been developed out there in the industry. We focus specifically in interaction between VASP and non-custodial wallet. And the whole solution is made up of like three big components. There's a verifier component, a vault component, and a data warehouse component. With the verifier, users are able to verify the ownership of their non-custodial wallets, and being issued a credential of their ownership of that non-custodial wallet. This information that the user is sharing, right, is stored in a vault in a very privacy-oriented way that Vadim can touch on. And the third component, the data warehouse, is really the components that a VASP would use to verify the information about that non-custodial wallet. So this is kind of like quickly, without going too much into the details of like how the technical solution is structured and how we're positioning ourselves out there.
But all the fun is in the details. I'm really, really excited for the world to see this framework because I think it's pretty awesome. I just wanted to add that, so FATF themselves in that recommendation 16, they acknowledge that currently there are no tools to verify ownership. So VASPs that are originating or receiving a transaction from non-custodial wallet, they're obligated to write down, to record the information about the potential owner of that non-custodial wallet. But FATF says we can't think of any way to verify that the user of Coinbase is actually telling the truth. Well, so private framework actually comes back and says, actually, there is a way. But it hinges on some very, very important technical assumptions. And that is that there is a way that a vault could be built that is we call it one-directional vault. So the information goes in, and one can verify that for that particular non-custodial wallet address, the owner information is as was provided by the user of Coinbase. And if not, there's no match, there's no information, inconclusive, and there is actually no way, not even for law enforcement, to figure out who that owner of that non-custodial wallet is. This is a very important part because otherwise, who would volunteer to provide their information to somebody like a verifier to put that information into the vault? So that one directionality is at the core of the private framework. So private, it's not only private by architecture, not only in the name, it's truly what we were setting out to build.
So it sounds like private is really presenting a solution for a problem that regulators and VASPs, financial institutions, have really had no answer for solving at this point, right? In the context of verifying identities around non-custodial wallets, etc. One of obviously the ongoing concerns of the crypto community when it comes to regulations, when it comes to monitoring, when it comes to sanctions screening, is the idea of privacy, sovereignty, decentralization. How does the private framework sort of mitigate some of those fears?
Yeah, so the privacy of users is really at the core of the framework that we're proposing. Everything that we've described in the paper hinges on users' willingness to provide their information in order to verify ownership of their non-custodial wallet. That information is put into the vault, one-directional vault, so that only the verification of their identity is possible, but not really revelation or identification based on a known non-custodial wallet address. Like, for example, nobody can come in and say, who does this wallet address belong to? This is exactly what we want to avoid, and we're proposing to really solidify that notion with some of the cryptographic technologies that we're putting forward for proposal to the ecosystem to solve this exact problem. For example, we're not really dictating how that vault has to be implemented. We're proposing a few technologies like homomorphic encryption could be one, could be based on hashed information that is stored in the vault. This is something that we're asking the whole community to come together and help us solve this problem. But we know that the solution is possible. And that is the solution that we're looking for in order to instill that trust in our framework for folks that want to remain anonymous and are concerned for the security of their information. And for that exact reason, they chose to participate in Web3 world and actually get a non-custodial wallet. Francesco, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think you covered it completely, right? At the same time, this gives trust to virtual asset service providers, right? That need to verify some of that information without revealing any information on the non-custodial wallet side. And of course, these kind of like identity. We're basically combining the identity skills and technologies that GlobaliD has developed into the blockchain intelligence components that AnChain has developed in the past couple of years, right? So really like the merging and the kind of like the collaboration between us two and the putting together of like our two technologies is really complementary in this to enable both non-custodial wallets to get verified their information and be able to access some of the services that Web3 offers, and at the same time, virtual asset service providers to be compliant with some of these regulations.
So right now, private is more or less just a white paper. Um, the additional bit of exciting news is that GlobaliD and AnChain are partnering to work on an end-to-end solution around the private framework. Francesco, do you want to tell us a little bit about that project?
Sure, happy to. So we're right now we're releasing a technical framework we're putting out there for the entire industry to take a look at, to provide feedback, and to collaborate if interested. At the same time, though, we're actually working between AnChain and GlobaliD in integrating our two technologies and solutions, right? So this is really a first of its kind integration. And after releasing the technical white paper, well, we're already actually working on it. We will be releasing, we'll be building some of the components of this technical framework and releasing it soon in the future, right? Cannot tell a date yet, but we're confident that some of these components are coming along well already, and as soon as we have a first version, we'll make it available for the industry.
Yeah, it's just an exciting opportunity to already start developing certain pieces that will see private as a working framework, not just a white paper. But we do invite the industry to come take a look, to poke holes in our assumptions, to offer solutions, and join us in providing this solution to the rest of the world. I don't think it's going to take any one particular company or not even two companies to make this happen. It really needs to gain trust from the whole industry as a whole, for folks to start trusting this framework.
Awesome, and all very exciting. We're starting to make these first steps, first with a white paper, and like you said, Vadim, it's not just going to be GlobaliD and AnChain. We're going to need help building this out. Um, but the beginning of a very exciting journey. Francesco, any final thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Alec. So this is really a collaborative effort among industry participants, right? From regulators to exchanges, marketplaces, protocols, wallet providers, blockchain intelligence companies, or law enforcement, of course. We're talking about big challenges that are introduced in the industry, right? And we want everybody's input to make sure we account for everything that needs to be addressed for these regulations, right? So really like invitation to read our white paper at privateframework.com, and really feel free to reach out to us for feedback, suggestions, and clarification, or if you want to be part of the development, right, of like this solution, or if you need access to this kind of solution, right? So really, there's so much great innovation, right, happening in the Web3 space, and we're here to protect that innovation by providing builders and consumers with the right security tools to continue building and consuming these innovations, right? Whether it's DeFi, whether it's NFT, DAOs, stablecoin, GameFi, or the next new thing. So thank you everybody for listening, and hopefully we'll have something for you soon.
Francesco, thank you. Looking forward to hear from folks. If you think that parts of it can be developed, if you have the technology that can fit within the private framework, let us know. If you think that you don't like something should be corrected about the white paper, let us know as well. If you want to just reach out, say hi, and learn more about what we do with Francesco, that's cool too. Alec, I'm sure our viewers will know how to reach out, how to reach us, and look forward to talking to everybody. Thanks so much.
Oh, download the white paper. If you have questions, if you'd like to collab, reach out to us. All of that information will be in the description below. Francesco, Vadim, thank you so much for your time today. And yeah, we're all thrilled that private is out there in the wild.
Thank you.
Thank you
All right.
both.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Alec.
everyone. See you on
Bye-bye.
the next one.